Assalamu alaikum, everybody. It's 2 o'clock, so it's time for the Gulf Expat Show. That didn't work, did it? Sorry, we tried something and it failed.
Yeah.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Rabbi shrah li sadri wa yassir li amri wahlul uqdatan min lisani yafqahu qawli. Welcome to my family and co-hosts, Rifka, my wife, and Yusuf, my son.
Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum salam. And we were going to have our other son join us today, weren't we? Ibrahim, but
He's still asleep.
He chickened out at the last minute. We thought it would be nice to have a younger voice. He was 17 now, but he was a young lad when we were in Qatar, and we thought his experience would be worth adding. So that goes on to what this show is about today. We've talked about Turkey, we've talked about Morocco, we talked before that about Abu Dhabi, about Al Ain, about Dubai, and what we haven't done is actually talk about Qatar, which is where we lived for 6 years, 7 years for you guys, and I was there for 9, 10 years. We've mentioned accommodation and housing and education and all these kind of things, but we haven't actually told our listeners and our Facebook viewers what it was like out there. What did we get up to? What's life like? Is it good fun? Is it boring? Is it just like Dubai? You know, what's life like in Qatar, Yusuf? I'm going to come to you in a second.
Oh, okay.
But before I come to you, what do you think life is like in Qatar? Have you experienced Qatar? Have you been to Qatar and also to Dubai or to Riyadh? Can you make any comparisons? Do you want to ask us any questions about life in Qatar? Are you thinking about moving out there? Are you worried that it's a bit of a backwater? Are you worried that it's not as fun or interesting as some other places? You've heard what we've had to say about Turkey and Morocco. You've heard our guests talk about Abu Dhabi and Dubai and Al Ain. Let's talk Qatar for an hour or so. So please do join us. It's 07933 003 179. 07933 003 179. You can text us, WhatsApp us. You're more than welcome to join us by calling in, and we'll put you on the air. You can join us on Facebook, and you can join us via the Ramadan radio app as well, via ramadan.live. So, life in Qatar. Is it all deserts and much booze?
No.
Okay.
There's more to it than that. I think generally the idea that people have of Doha is that it's a lot more boring than Dubai.
Yeah.
And it's quieter, and I think the general perception is that if you want to go for a holiday, there's no point going to Doha. You may as well go to Dubai, right? That's like the standard thing.
You're going to spend 400 quid to go to the Gulf.
More than that.
Or 600 quid.
You're going to spend 600
isn't
quid.
the flight 600 quid?
Yeah. Yeah, it depends.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay. Yeah, but I would disagree with that whole idea, because I would never go to Dubai. I've been, and I didn't like it, and I prefer Doha. Okay,
well, let's talk about Doha.
Yeah.
We can talk about why we think, or you think, it's better than Dubai. To be fair, we haven't lived in Dubai.
Okay,
we visited there as a holiday destination a couple of times. I've been there several times for work.
Yeah.
But we did have somebody on from Dubai. So
and to be fair, the picture of life that he painted was very, very different from the whole,
perception
tourist experience. So I don't think we're qualified.
Well, but we're qualified to speak as tourists in both countries, because we've also been there on holiday. Doha.
Yeah, but that's not this program.
Okay.
That was your program yesterday.
True.
About traveling whilst Muslim.
Okay.
So you can save that for your program.
Fine.
But my program is about life in Qatar, and that's what we're going to be talking about. So one of the things that we did regularly, and I think we agree that we all enjoyed doing, and participating in it, and the kind of the run up to it, and the actual activity itself, etc., was meeting other families and interacting with them and socializing with them, especially, for instance, going to the parks and having like a picnic, or going to the beaches and having a barbecue, that kind of thing. Would you agree with that? Is that something which was
I'd say that was one of the key sort of like weekend activities that we do. Sort of maybe on a Jummah or on a Saturday, we'd get together, sort of like I don't know, 6 to 8 families, and make our way to the somebody would pick a park. Maybe one family would instigate it, call lots of others, and it would go on like a little chain reaction.
It's usually us.
No, to be fair, sometimes it was other people.
It was never us. We're the least social people in the country.
but right, we used to. What
That
happened?
is not true. That is not true. That is not true.
What happened was that the women used to, well, each family would be responsible for getting a certain amount of food to then sort of put into the pot, right? So to put onto the table.
Yeah.
And we would all share it. And it wasn't like you had to cater for 6 families. You just cater for like sort of 1.5 to 2 families, right? And that would then get shared around.
Mm.
And it was just a really nice, casual, no pressure way of socializing. And it was very sort of chilled. It would be like you'd go out there sort of once it started to be less hot, sort of around 4 p.m, 5 p.m. You'd pray out there, you'd chill out there until like 10, 11 o'clock. It was very kind of
and there was always like, everyone would always be assigned different foods to bring, right?
No.
Yeah. One person would be the dessert guy, one person would be the pizza guy, one person would
it was a bit more loose than that, wasn't it? It was like bring a dish.
Yeah.
Right? But inevitably people would be kind of thinking, well, should I bring a takeaway dish or should I make something?
You'd always have, there'd be people so you'd always have like the lazy people in the group who would always get takeaways. And then you'd have the people who are like,
it's just,
I mean,
what notice you give them.
every single time I would say.
No, every time there was always one person who came with 5 pizzas.
Yeah, because they
just 5 large pizzas. It's easy.
Yeah.
I mean, we've done that. We did that a couple of times.
Yeah, a couple of times is allowed, right? That's people.
But the thing that you'd really want in your group is you'd want either a Palestinian or a Lebanese or Jordanian family to be part of your group, because the food that they would bring, like inevitably the women would cook and the food would just be amazing. Like they would have they'd have like those vine leaves, and they'd have the kind of filled
the stuffed zucchinis and the
homemade
dolma.
vine
Yeah. But I mean, I think they're probably thinking the same thing because that's their food, right? So they probably think, oh, I hope the Pakistani family comes and brings the samosa and the biryani and so. Yes, we did. Yeah.
And what was standard was you'd have like a massive vat of garak, which is like a 3.5 litre thing, and everyone would just sort of like top up. The women would
dispenser rather than a vat.
Yeah. And the women would like sort of sit on one, like a large picnic mat type of thing, and the men would sit on another picnic mat, and the kids would just have the free range of the entire park, and you wouldn't feel stressed even after it was dark. You wouldn't feel stressed about where's my kid. They were playing together, perfectly safe.
What would the kids break off and do, sir?
As kids, what did us kids do? We just played football. I think that's the main difference between. I mean, everyone can have picnics in parks, right? There's nothing that special about this in Doha.
Yeah.
But it's the fact that we could leave and we didn't have phones, right? We just kind of like.
Why didn't you have phones?
We weren't allowed phones.
Trick question.
We didn't know, but the majority of people didn't like. Actually, maybe it was just us who didn't have phones, but we were allowed to go without phones. Right.
No, to be honest with you, this is kind of, it's a few years ago. I think that the advent of every 13, 14-year-old having a smartphone is a relatively new phenomenon. Relatively, 5 years or so.
I remember when I was 13,
over
14.
there.
Yeah, okay, yeah. I think generally people didn't have phones.
Yeah.
We didn't have phones, and we still were allowed to go to there was Aspire Park, was one of the parks, the main parks that we used to all gather in. And it's massive. I think it's the biggest one.
I think so, yeah.
And we'd go off to the other end of the park, we wouldn't be seen for hours, and no one would worry about what was happening to us or whether we were safe or whatever. You just say, okay, come back here by Maghrib time, and then we'll all go to eat or something like that.
Yeah.
And that's the main kind of difference. But we'd go, there was like a football area, we'd play football with the other kids there.
And not just the kids from our picnic group, right? It was like...
Oh yeah, it was a whole like kind of, what's the word? Like kind of tournament type thing that would happen, and there'd be people from, because it was so diverse, you'd have like all different types of Arabs. You'd have a group of Qatari kids, you'd had a group of like Egyptian kids, and then you'd have a group of Western expat kids, and we'd all kind of play together. And you'd have the Qataris who'd try and like rule the pitch, but they'd always get like kind of sidelined and not really. They think that they should be respected because they're Qatari, but they never get that respect because it's just all kids. No one cares.
Yeah.
And it was kind of a little bit lawless football. I mean, it was just kind of like breaking each other's ankles kind of thing. But the main,
not literally,
but people would get hurt.
Quite rough, wasn't
people
it?
Would get hurt. Yeah, it was rough. It was because it was mostly like.
And also the age range was quite a lot, right? So you'd have.
Oh yeah, it was
like 9-year-olds playing like
16-year-olds. Yeah. I think you can find that in every country somewhere.
Yeah.
Less so in London. I mean, over here it's more just kind of like you have to pay for your slot of goals, and that's football here.
Yeah.
But over there, yeah, you can just kind of like play with whoever you find, and it's not weird.
And of course, it wasn't us just. This isn't an activity which is exclusive to us. In every park, you'd have groups of people doing the same thing.
Yeah.
Right? You'd have groups of other 6 families sitting a little bit further away, and another 6-7 families, or sometimes you'd have just a group of women sitting, especially Qatari women. They'd come and sit amongst themselves,
and because
depending on which park it was and stuff like that. Because different parks had different atmos, right?
Yeah.
So one of the parks, which is in slightly the older area, Aspire Park you mentioned, which is next to one of the more traditional areas in Doha, that you used to see a lot of Qataris there, much more Qataris there. Whereas you went to the, people will be familiar with the Museum of Islamic Art, the very famous building designed by an architect of note whose name I've forgotten, but the one which looks like a woman in a niqab, the windows, a very beautiful design. So there's a park next to that called MIA Park, which we've frequented very often, but that was a very different atmosphere in that park. It was a more modern park. It had better facilities, and it was kind of cleaner and more. You'd probably recognize it more like a park over here. It was more hilly and stuff like that. It had more kind of rolling hills and things like that.
You never really used to find.
You'd have more expats there.
Yeah, you never used to really find Qataris or you find some obviously, but it wouldn't be as many Qataris in MIA Park.
Well, I'd say it was a different type of Qatari,
really?
Right? Yeah, you'd have the more traditional ones who used to live in the Mueda area, going to Aspire Park. Not exclusively, it's a generalization. And you'd have some more kind of modern ones, I think. The younger generation went to MIA.
I think there's something which Yusuf said that I want to pick up on. He said that there's no difference really between, there's nothing to stop you, lots of different families gathering in parks in the UK. But I think the difference is that it's not a cultural thing which people do here, like have massive picnics. If you had like a massive load of Muslim families gather here, that would be fine. You could do it, but it's not something, the whole park isn't filled with that. And also there's a level of relaxation and a level of just calm and not being conscious of the fact that you're Muslim out there, which you don't have over here. So for example, Baham was just talking about the women in sort of, or the Qatari people in Aspire Park.
Yeah. And
you would have women, now as a woman in hijab, when I'm relaxing in the park over here, I'm very conscious of kind of how I'm sitting, because it's like, okay, am I representing all of the Muslim women in the world? Do I need to sit in a certain way? Is it okay for me to lean back? Over there, what you have is women bring their cushions. So these like traditional women with their sort of niqabs and everything, they bring their cushions, they bring their soft furnishings, whatever. They're lying back. It's completely chilled. Nobody's looking at each other and checking each other out in like a weird way.
Yeah.
And that kind of comfort of just being Muslim and relaxed and not having to be conscious of like what you look like as a Muslim woman is something that you don't really feel when you're sort of relaxing.
Just kind of linking to that, I think the fact that, over there, because there's so many families and so many Muslims there, if anyone was ever praying or there was a little Jamaat going, everyone would join. Like everyone in that area of the park would all just join together and pray together. And that was just normal. Like over here, if you tap someone, be like, okay, do you mind if I join you before you start praying? It'd be like, yeah, okay, cool. It'd be like 2 people maybe, and even then it's kind of like you hesitate before doing it.
In the park?
Yeah, I've done it in the park once, I think in Hyde Park.
But can you imagine if there was like a 50-person Jamaat
which never happened
in Hyde Park? It'd be like...
And I think that sense of...
Riot police would be sent in.
I think that sense of, you feel that sense of brother, because it's like sort of United Colours of Islam or whatever, like when you're in the sort of park area.
The very 90s.
But it helps to make you feel, I don't know, it just gives you a really warm sort of fuzzy feeling, having all of these sort of like different nationalities coming and praying together, and people praying slightly different ways and whatever. But it doesn't matter because you're all just.
And the other kind of qualitative thing there, which just kind of occurred to me, is there's no dogs running around.
Yeah.
Right. If you're in a park here, if you're in Hyde Park, if you're in wherever, like a local park, just like here in Norbury, you have to watch out for mess on the ground. You have, you have a picnic, you don't know if somebody's dog's going to come up and start sniffing and ruining it and stuff. You don't have that concern over there at all. And that, just that part of it actually makes it much more relaxed, makes you feel much more like you can just chill out and just kick back.
The only kind of nuisance in parks, I would say, is because of the heat. There's lots of little, when it gets closer to Maghrib time, end of us, we've got lots of little fly things. What are they called?
Midges.
Midges. You got lots of little midges, which I thought were called midges until a couple of days ago. But they're called midges.
You also thought that Bath was in the north of England.
Oh yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yes, you did.
So they're called midges, and yeah, you get lots of them. That was very annoying.
It was.
Yeah.
It was. Yeah, I mean, they swarmed.
Yeah, no, it was like once they started coming, you're like, okay, you have to leave the park.
Yeah, it wasn't like a few that you could swat away. It was like a swarm of them. Just to carry on, we've got a few questions coming through, which we're going to go to in a minute. But what I just wanted to mention around, it's not just our kind of families, right? So we were lucky in terms of the affluence that we had, the kind of living that we had, right? The standard of living that we had. This was something which crossed all kind of nationality boundaries and even wealth boundaries, because the parks were free to go into, as parks are here. So you'd have not just groups of expat Arabs, expat British, you'd have a gaggle of like Filipinos, especially on Fridays, because a lot of the kind of the working population there, they work 6 days a week rather than 5. And so they'd work Saturday through to Thursday. And so Friday was generally their day off. And there'd be like tons of them in the park on Friday. And that was lovely to see as well, because it was like, they really, they probably work a lot harder, and they have a tougher life out there than we did, but they really enjoy themselves, and they really go to town, and that's always nice to see. It was always, and there'd be groups of, we talked about groups of families, but there'd be groups of at least 40 in one go, and they'd have their music on, they'd have their own food, and completely uninhibited in the way they behaved, and that was it.
However, I need to sort of like put like a counter argument to that, which is that whilst you did have loads of sort of in the Filipino group, you'd have lots of men and women.
Yeah.
Now the people who really missed out, and like it needs to be said, was the sort of the workers from the subcontinent. So you had Indian workers, Nepalese workers, who, because they used to go around like groups of like whatever 10 men or 5 men, they would then be stopped from going into what were considered family parks.
Yeah.
And so they wouldn't get access to the same, and it was done in sort of guise of safety for the families and safety, which is in itself really kind of judgmental and all the rest of it, that young men on their own are going to pose some kind of threat, and it would always be young men from a certain kind of cultural background or whatever.
The only kind of,
that's true.
I think the only single young Indian men in the park would be either the cleaners who were cleaning up. The reason the park was so spotless is because there were like a team of cleaners who would come and like pick up rubbish after everyone, or the people who, basically security guards who would drive buggies, and anyone who was like disabled or just lazy would take the buggies around the park.
Disabled or lazy, those two categories. So that we had a question come in from Sajad saying, how usable are the parks and the open spaces considering the very hot weather? Well, they weren't really used during the hot weather so much, right? They were quite empty. There weren't that many shaded areas in the parks. It's usually in the winter time you could use them during the daytime, and any time after kind of between December and February, you're talking about after Asr, basically.
Yeah, it's too hot.
And there was no, over here I think the parks tend to close at sunset, right? And you don't go for a picnic in the park after sunset. Over there, that is the time to go. You go Asr time, or you go just before Maghrib, you pray Maghrib, you're there till Isha. It's a different, they're usable because you adjust to it, right? We've had quite a few other questions come in. One from Imran. What has been the impact of the upcoming World Cup and its citizens? Do you think they'll be ready for it? And another one on the sporting theme from Najib. Sporting events seem to have a high prominence promoting Qatar as a leisure destination. How well organized are they? What is it like to attend? So should we move on to that? Are we kind of exhausted our discussion on park life?
Yeah.
Just one other thing I could mention. I mean, in terms of, well, we haven't talked about the different parks.
Shall we skip to this, because otherwise I don't think we're going to get a chance to go through.
What did you want to mention about the different parks?
So I mean, there's
what?
like sporting stuff that you can do. So
Oh,
like
I see.
bikes,
Facilities.
yeah, you've got bikes, you've got little shops, you've got little little pedalos.
Yeah. You could do kind of boating on the lake, kind of
trampolines,
depending on the park. All right. The parks are really they've come a long way since 2010 when we first went there.
Yeah.
They were basically then they were just open green spaces, and now they've got more sophisticated playgrounds and facilities and hiring equipment and that kind of thing. They have all that kind of gym equipment as well, don't they, inside the parks?
Yeah.
And the most recent park which opened now, I think, was Sheraton Park. I mean, of the major parks, and each district has its own small family park, doesn't it?
Yeah.
In Doha. So they've really upped their game on that kind of thing. I think we should move on to we can talk about kind of other cultural pursuits. And within that, we can talk about sporting activity and answer these two questions. So the first one around the World Cup and the impact. Well, it's really put Qatar on the map for a start.
Yeah.
And it's changed the way I think people perceive Qatar, both positively and negatively. There's been a lot of negative press around the kind of the Labour population, and certain newspapers seem to be kind of obsessed with that. But also it's forced Qatar to up their game in terms of labour rights, in terms of human rights, in terms of organisational ability, security, facilities, even these parks. It's all part of that. So there's been a huge amount of investment in infrastructure, road infrastructure, hotel infrastructure, etc. So it's given Qatar that impetus to improve. There's been a huge benefit to Qatar as a country, actually. And do we think they'll be ready? Yes, I do. Already, I think 2 of the stadiums are already complete.
Oh, right. See, they were planning to build.
Well, I think there's 6 new stadiums, and 2 of them are already functional.
They already had 2 before that.
No, new stadiums.
Okay.
And they completely revamped the ones that they had.
Yeah.
From before, so they've kind of like upscaled them massively.
Oh yeah, and the Aspire stadium's got like some cool air conditioning feature.
Yeah. Plus the World Cup obviously has been moved to December 22.
Yeah.
So, and the weather there is perfect at that time. So I honestly do think it's going. If it goes ahead, if it's not delayed because of coronavirus, I think it will be a spectacular World Cup. I genuinely think it will be really, really good. The one thing that they do need to sort out is kind of, the security guards are not as conditioned to deal with large crowds. So they'll probably bring in external security guard companies that deal with that. So they are still a little bit disorganized.
Do they have enough hotels and like space for everyone who's going to come and visit?
Tons. They're building more. Plus they're going to have floating hotels, like temporary floating hotels, like in big cruise ships and things. It's really, I think it's going to be really good. But that goes to the question that Najib asked about how well organized are the events. So when we first went there, the events weren't very well organized, were they? No. So there are some big sporting events there.
Yeah, we went to we watched, was it Argentina versus Brazil?
Yes.
Came to Doha for a friendly. We watched Messi, Neymar, all of them lot. Yeah. Which I was
too young to appreciate.
Annoyingly, I was too young to appreciate, but I remember it being good.
Yeah,
I remember there being someone who ran onto the pitch.
That's right. There was a pitch invader. He was a young man who just kind of got a little bit happy and decided to run across the pitch. The comedic part of it was that the security guards, going back to the lack of organization and training, and this was back in 2012 or something. Like that, they were quite large and unfit, and he basically outran them. So he ran up one end of the pitch and they chased him, and he just turned around and ran down the other end of the pitch and into the crowd. And they by the time they got to 1.5 lengths of the pitch, they were exhausted. And they oh, forget it, you just go. And they didn't bother chasing him. So that was the best part of the match, actually.
Yeah,
no, the Messi goal was the best part of the match.
I don't remember.
We can say that we've seen Messi score a goal.
Yeah, people wait like years to go and watch him play. Yeah. And like go save up and fly out. But
there's also the tennis.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, didn't we watch some sort of final or something?
Yeah.
What do we watch?
Tennis.
Okay.
Okay, there's a men's tournament, there's a women's tournament. Also, there's MotoGP. The first race of the MotoGP calendar is in March in Lusail, in the Lusail circuit. We went to that as well.
That links to this question of how much is there to explore in Qatar outside of Doha. So Lusail's outside of Doha. It's like a big track. How far away is it? Like,
well, it's next to Doha, so it's
yeah, but Qatar's tiny, so everyone's basically next to Doha.
It's about 5 minutes from Doha.
Oh, is it? Okay.
I mean, Lusail, they call it a new city, and it's not really a new city. It's like saying Croydon is a new city next to London.
Right. Okay.
Right? It's that kind of thing. But it is. I mean, the stadium. When we went, just as a reminder, when we went again, it was early days. It was still. This goes to Najib's point around they're trying to show Doha as being a sporting leisure activity, sort of a event-based tourism destination. The tickets were really cheap. You probably don't remember. They were about £5 each per head, right, for us to go.
£5?
Yeah, £5 per person, about 25 riyal. And people were just, and it wasn't that popular. And so they would let people in anyway, even if they didn't have tickets.
Yeah, just to fill the stadium.
Now it's around 250 riyal, right?
Oh, really?
It's a much more expensive. You can buy a weekend ticket and stuff. But also, you're paying for more because they've rebuilt it. They've got proper security, proper organisation.
Well, what was it like to attend that football match in terms of like the crowd, the type of people there? I remember, were there a lot of expats, or was it mostly like single men, Indian men, Filipino men who've been asked to kind of like, who found this opportunity and basically free tickets and it was mostly.
So what they used to do was the sporting events. It's not so much, again, this was a time when they were trying to get these things rolling. People wouldn't attend the sporting event because it wasn't part of their culture.
Yeah.
And so instead of having empty stadiums on the TV, they would just bus in people for free. They'd just go to the...
So they'd bus in lots of school kids as well. So I remember at their school, like the entire school would get free tickets and stuff. And so a lot of kids, they used to have like opportunities for kids to go and see as well.
Yeah. Is there much to explore? Do you want to carry on talking about what's outside of Doha a little bit?
Yeah, so there's, I mean, all of the kind of quad biking, dune bashing type stuff is all outside Doha. There's a main beach that everyone would go to called Sea Line Beach, which is outside Doha. That was like right in the north, isn't it?
Opposite end.
Right in the south.
Yes, that's
right. All right, it was right in the south.
Your geography really of England and Qatar is pretty poor.
And yeah, so Sea Line Beach was like a name that everyone. I think it was quite expensive, wasn't it? You had to pay to enter it.
Yeah.
But it had like
it's a proper organised beach rather than with organised activities rather than just an open beach.
Yeah, and then on the way to Sea Line Beach was quad biking.
Yep.
And I mean, there would be loads of different quad biking ones, but the main one that people kind of recommend was this large stretch, and there were like quite a few different quad biking
hiring companies,
little stores, hiring companies, and they'd all have different quad bikes, like they're all different levels of power.
Why don't you explain to the listeners what quad biking is for those who don't know?
I mean, it's just going on a quad bike. Yeah, I think everyone knows what quad biking is.
All right, fair enough.
But they had
ATVs are also known as.
Oh really? I mean, yeah. But I don't think anyone.
All-terrain vehicle, do they not know as that as well? Anyway, it's really good fun.
It's really good fun, and they have different types of quad bikes. It's different, like.
Well, you can have the different power and different size, so kids can go on them as well, and adults can go on them.
Yeah.
And you have ones which are automatic, which is kind of twist and go ones, and ones which actually have gears, which you control with your feet, like on a motorbike. And they have lights at the front, but
no. So basically, they put the lights on, like, so that when it gets to Maghrib, you can still see, but it's completely unsafe after Maghrib. Once it comes to the end of Asr, don't go quad biking in Doha, because you literally it's pitch black. Yeah. Even if the lights work, which usually they don't, you can't see anything. So I crashed once, and there was like a big pole, a massive pole that was like just in the sand for some reason, and it was dark, and I was going full speed, and my light was on, but I didn't see it. I crashed into this pole, and I kind of like flew off the quad bike, and the quad bike rolled.
It can be quite. I mean, there's no health and safety.
Yeah, it sounds quite dangerous, but
requirements
as long as it's still light, it's fine.
Yeah, but it all seems to be a little bit sensible. You can I mean, you went on it as well, didn't you? You've been
So
quad biking.
I was really excited because I hadn't thought that, you know, wearing like a long thing you could go on like a quad bike and stuff, and that's part of the kind of health and safety, right? That they don't actually check that what you're wearing is appropriate and all the rest of it. But yeah, I went, and I think it was really good fun up until I was in my late 30s, and then it just hurt.
It does. If you're not used to it, it does hurt your kind of your backside a little bit, and kind of the bone at the bottom of your spine.
Yeah.
Like horse riding, that kind of thing. It hurts that area.
It didn't hurt mine.
And everybody crashes. Everybody crashes at some point.
Yeah, I mean, even especially when you're going up the sand dunes,
Usually
it's too steep and it stops, and then either like you start falling back and you have to get off because it rolls, and it just starts falling, or you just get stuck.
Yeah,
you have to wait for people.
Yeah, that's right. And they do. The guys who are kind of organising it, and they're kind of watching all the time.
And they're driving around.
And so they, you know, if you stall, or if your quad bike stalls, or if you get stuck in the sand, then they'll come and help, right? And you're going as a group anyway, so you know, it's part of life. You might get a little bit injured, but you got to do so to have some fun. Other cultural stuff.
So in terms of
other than sporting.
So there's lots of museums in Qatar.
Yeah.
Sort of amazing museums which have lots of exhibitions. So both in Qatar, in the Museum of Islamic Art, there's a Museum of Modern Art as well over there.
Yeah.
I don't think it's called Museum of Modern Art, but it has more modern art in it. And basically, you have the opportunity there to interact with or get really close to really famous artists that maybe you wouldn't kind of over here. You'd have to like do something special in order to get access to those. So I remember there was one where we could see like a really famous artist at work. You have lots of workshops which are available for free, which they fund, and so lots and lots of opportunities to experience all of that. You also had Al Shaqab.
Al Shaqab is basically an equestrian center, right? It's kind of high end. It's part of Qatar Foundation. It's kind of described as a 6-star hotel for horses. And we went there a couple of times. It's really beautiful to watch the horses do their kind of dressage and the show jumping and things. It sounds really poncy.
Yeah.
I never went, so to me this sounds...
And I'd also probably never do it over here.
Yeah.
It's
but
weird,
see,
isn't it?
That's the whole point, is that you experience things which as a Muslim here you really wouldn't, because it's like not your scene, or it's something which you wouldn't feel you'd probably be welcome at and all the rest of it. Whereas over
out
there,
of place, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
But isn't that also because of the level of wealth in that country? Like, yeah, okay, obviously over here it's more of a, it's not something that you find lots of Muslims at.
Yeah.
But I'm sure you would find very wealthy Muslims at those events over here as well.
Yeah.
So maybe it's just because it's
you would, but there'd be a certain, maybe it's a perception thing. It's a certain type of person that goes.
And even over there, it wouldn't. You'd still find quite a large majority of non-Muslims at these equestrian clubs and whatever.
We have got a lot of questions come through. We've got about 6, 7 to get through, but and we will get to them. I just want to finish off on this bit, and then we'll go to the questions. So if you do have some comments and questions, please do keep them coming through. This is the Gulf Expat Show on Ramadan Radio. We're live on Facebook and on Ramadan.live and on the app. And you can join us and text in with your comments and queries on 07933 003 179. 07933 003 179.
I just wanted to talk a little bit about museums.
And libraries.
And libraries, just to do, I didn't mean museums, I meant libraries, just to do justice to that side of Qatar, because I think until I discovered Georgetown Library, I was kind of bored out of my brain in Doha. Not for the whole time, but what they have over there is a lack of books. So you either had HMV or you had Javira Bookstore, and they sold really dull books, which were also really overpriced. You had to wait for somebody to come over from the UK and then like do an Amazon delivery and then get it sent over. And there wasn't that as much online shopping back then either.
Yeah.
However, once I discovered Georgetown Library, it's like completely free to the public to go to. They have an amazing set of books, which are really specialist, high level, really interesting things on politics and history, and you could basically lose yourself there for like the whole day.
Yeah.
And they've got like a really good canteen as well, so you can kind of like stay there all day, go and take a break. They've got places to pray. Next door to Georgetown Library, they've now opened up Qatar National Library, which is incredible. It's like you could just go there for a holiday and spend your entire week in the library. It's just, I mean, if you're that way inclined, it's really, really cool. And again, a massive complex with loads of books, fantastic spaces to study. So yeah, there is that.
Yeah. I mean, that's a really good point, because again, when we first arrived there, from a cultural point of view, the Museum of Islamic Art had recently opened, relatively recently, and there wasn't anything else really from a cultural point of view to do there, was there? You had, like you said, the bookstores, which were very standard, and you had something called the Sheikh Faisal Museum, which you have to look it up. It's very difficult to describe. It's basically a personal collection of somebody who's very wealthy there, and he does a lot of kind of charity work and stuff, and he has his own museum of his own stuff that he's collected over the years, which is really fascinating. But apart from those things, there wasn't much. But now, like you said, you've got the Georgetown Library, the National Library, you have the MIA, Museum of Islamic Art, the Makkah Museum of Modern Art, which you mentioned, which is next to MIA. And you also have now, what's it called, the National Museum of Qatar. I don't think that's open yet, or has it had a soft opening? It's that one which is on the Corniche, which has kind of the flying saucer kind of design thing. Anyway, so the National Museum of Qatar, I think it's had a soft open. I can't remember, to be honest. Maybe somebody can text in and correct us. So there's also something called the Fire Station Museum.
Yeah.
It used to be a fire station, and then they converted it into a museum. That's also modern art, and they have several exhibitions there from international artists. So that has really changed in Qatar. That side of things has really changed, and for people who are that way inclined, it makes it a much more a desirable destination. That you're not just going there and going to the malls, which we will come on to in a second. Did you want to say something, Mr.?
No, I mean that's the main thing that makes Qatar kind of different. You know, when I describe Qatar as like a destination, it's a lot more cultural in that way.
Yeah.
Like it's not as, obviously it has the flashy stuff, but it's got this whole other side of it, which is all like, you know, artsy and booky.
Yeah.
That you wouldn't expect in a country like that or a city like that.
So I had a question. We'll take them one at a time. I think we've talked about what's there to explore. We didn't really talk that much about what's there to do outside of Doha. Let me just quickly mention a couple of things. You mentioned the beaches in the south and sea line. There's other beaches. Obviously, there's a huge coastline in Qatar. On the west of the country, there's a place called Dukhan, and that's got a beautiful beach as well. On a clear day, I think you can just about see Bahrain, or you can pretend to. No, that's what it is. You can think you're seeing Bahrain, but actually what you're looking at is an island, which is between Bahrain and Qatar. But you can convince yourself that you've seen Bahrain. That's good. And in the north, the Shamal area, which means north, there are beaches and that kind of things like that. And then there's Zagara Fort, which is also in the west of the country. So there's quite a few things to explore outside of. There's the mango groves in the south as well.
Mango groves. I was thinking, what's he talking about?
Mango grove.
The Inland Sea?
No.
What?
No. I'll come back to it in a second.
Okay, cool.
Anyway, there's lots of stuff to do outside of Qatar, outside of Doha, which isn't city based, right? It's kind of outdoorsy pursuits to do there. Munir has asked, what is the worst thing about Doha? I suppose that's a very subjective thing. That what's your worst thing about Doha?
Oh, there's a few.
Yeah,
there's a few. I think one of the main things, either I would say, the treatment of labourers, or I would say cinemas.
Still treatment of labourers, or do you think it's improved?
I think there's still a long way to go.
Yeah, they're still very poor.
Okay.
Just the kind of, and so kind of linking into the parks thing about how generally single men labourers don't have access to the same thing that families do. It applies to malls as well. You'd have people stopped from going inside the malls because it's like, sorry, this is a family area.
Yeah.
But if it was a single man of another ethnicity or someone who was slightly well off, it'd be fine. I mean, I could have walked in there and I would have been fine. But someone else my age, who was Indian and in, you know, less good clothes.
But you did get stopped.
I got stopped. Okay, I got stopped once
in the souk because they thought you were a labourer.
They did think I was a labourer, which is nothing to be ashamed of.
No, I'm just saying that it's not. You know, the way they judge it is, you know, what's your what do they think you are?
Yeah,
not what you are.
Yeah, and to them it's just like, do you look like those kind of people? Okay, you must be a labourer.
Yeah.
Get out. This is a family place.
Yeah, I mean, one of my friends got stopped in the park, and he's a physician, he's a doctor, the GP from over here. He just happened to be wearing cheval kameez when he was there. And then when he responded to them in English, right, like in perfect English, well, not perfect English, because he's from Rochdale, but but in Rochdale English, then it was, then they backed off.
But that's how you. So when they tried to get me to leave, that's how you understand how they treat laborers. He kind of grabbed me by the arm and he was like, "Go, go."
Yeah.
Like no kind of like question, no kind of. He was like, "You go, go," kind of waving your hand, pulling me my arm, and then you have to come and be like, "No, part of our family."
I think I'm not denying there's a long way to go there, but I think if you compare it to 2010, it's still. I mean, it has come up. There's just from a housing facilities point of view, from a sponsorship system point of view, making sure that payment comes in time. There's stuff going on in the background, the regulatory stuff, which probably doesn't come to the fore, which I know is happening because I've worked in that part of the industry. But you're right. There's still a long way to go. There's definitely a long way to go, especially on the social side. And it's kind of social exclusion, because they do all still live in the labourer camps. And when we first went there and you saw a sign on the road for, this way for labour camp, and you think, labour camp? The hell's that all about?
I just wanted to add something to that point, because we've been talking a lot about young men from the subcontinent, how they get treated. Right? However, we need to also shine a light on how maids used to get treated. So it's a standard practice over there to have home help, right? So pretty much everybody had somebody who was a live-in. They used to call them live-in maids, right? Which basically mean like somebody who's looking after your home and helping you out.
Yeah.
But she was sort of like be like a looking after the house plus looking after the kids.
Yeah.
And there was like a real difference in the way that you saw these people being treated, and that it depended entirely on the family that they were with, right? Yeah. So you'd have some who were treated as an extended part of the family, and they would eat at the same table, they would eat the same food, they would go out at the same time, and all of that, and that was really refreshing and positive. But then you can't sort of turn a blind eye to the fact that there were women who sort of had to wear the kind of the uniform, and there was a question mark over whether if you're making people wear a uniform and you're giving them a sense of like identity in terms of their job, or you're actually just subjugating them and making them feel awkward. And so there was all of that. Plus,
you can just give them the choice, I suppose.
Yeah, and you'd also see sort of women just having to sit on a separate table with the kids, babysitting the kids while other people would be eating. And I remember that it used to make you feel really uncomfortable. And like, am I consciously just turning a blind eye to this in order to just carry on with my meal? And is my food sticking in my throat? You know what I mean? It's a horrible, horrible feeling to be present. Even if it's not your family or whatever, you can see other people treating other people like that, and you can't go around, telling that
you can't say anything to a family that might be Qatari, because they might know someone who get kicked out of the country. So you have to kind of like.
Well, I mean, I'm not sure that would be the best way of dealing with it either. Right? I think the better way of dealing with it, or it may not be as quick, but it's to set an example. Yeah. I'm not saying that we're kind of going over there and showing people how they could live their lives, but anybody, whether it's over here or over there, you set the example. So if you have a living maid, which we didn't have, you would sit them you treat them like part of the family, like you said, right? And you show that as an example to others. So this is how, and you did see that as well. Yeah, it wasn't as frequent, definitely, but you did see it. And when you did see it, it was really nice to see. It was like, you go, okay, kudos to these guys. And they know what they're doing.
And as expats, you have to sort of, as women who would be like the main kind of employer, you have to make that conscious choice that if you kind of raise your hand to actually go and get somebody who's going to be home help and live in your home, then do you have the strength of character to be treating that person, absolutely fairly and justly and righteously the entire time that they're with you? If you don't, then have that fear of God and just have her as somebody that comes and works for you for a couple of hours, does a cleaning job and then goes.
Yeah.
Because that was my main fear, is that, okay, I don't know if I would, what if I do say a sharp word at some point? I'm liable to do that, so let me just not go there.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes it's easy to kind of forget that you have like this Islamic responsibility as well, because you have that level of affluence and wealth and ease. I'm just going to move on, sorry, so because we've only got 10 minutes to go, and we want to burn through a few of these questions. And also there's an area which I wanted to pick up with you on specifically around you know, kind of activities for women and one of the lifestyle for women there. So I'm just going to quickly burn through a couple of these questions. We've done Munir's question about the worst thing about Doha. Well, we didn't, but I think I agree with you about cinemas. The cinemas there it's horrible being in a cinema there because
it's just Qataris on their phone the whole time.
People are,
not necessarily just Qataris.
Yeah, it's not just Qataris. It's everybody, and it's not like they're, you know, the phone rings and you go switch the phone off, right? No, they answer it. They answer the phone. They have the conversation. The light's on. You know, you can see it, you can hear it, you can hear the other end, and they giggle and they, you know, they're very. It's a horrible experience with cinema in Doha. Just so that you know, this is from Mohammed Noor. What a great show. We miss you here in Doha, Burhan. Thank you very much, Shanika Mohammed Noor, my good friend in Doha. That wasn't really a question, but lovely to hear from you. What are the masajid like in Qatar? We'll come to that. I'll come to that at the end. In terms of, we're not really going to answer it because it's going to lead into our next show. What other things what else is there for teenagers to do beside kind of being a mall rat? You know, hanging around malls, are there clubs, sports groups, males and females? Do you want to talk about that briefly, please, Yusuf? And then do you want to talk about the...
Yeah, okay, so basically there's only about 2 different things that we used to do as teenagers. There's either you go to the mall, or you go to someone's compound and use their facilities. And that's basically it. That's only really your 2 options. And before kind of Uber and taxi apps were introduced, you were completely reliant on your parents to come and pick you up. So it wasn't even an independent kind of like outing as a teenager. It was Mum, can you come pick me up from the mall, please?
That's because there's no public transport of any note, and you can't cycle around because it's not designed for cycling either from an infrastructure or weather point.
There's no pavements.
That's back then. That's changed now, right?
No, there are cycle lanes in terms of in areas for you to cycle, like around a park or something, but you can't cycle on the roads. Cycling isn't a form of commuting.
Yeah, so also I recognise they're called shopping centres, but over there we all call them malls.
But look, going to your mate's house or going to hang around in a shopping centre, how's that different from over here?
Well, the main difference is that the compound vibe. So
but what I mean is in terms of choice. Isn't that the same choice over here?
Yeah, it is. I mean, you've got options that are specific to like the Middle East. You could go like quad biking and go to the beach, which we did a couple of times.
Yeah.
But it's not the norm, especially for boys. I don't know, maybe the girls went to the beach all the time. I don't know. But we just kind of went to people's houses. The main difference is the fact that at these compounds, there was a little community. And over here, you kind of have to plan your time and be like, okay, I'm going to pay £6 and go to goals for an hour and play for 1 hour and then leave. You don't play with other people. There's no kind of like meeting new people. You just play with your mates and that's it.
Yeah.
And usually people don't turn up over here. But over there, it was kind of like you just go to the football area and there'd be people playing and you'd meet new people and just play and they'd be part of a compound kind of like group.
Okay.
You know?
Okay.
Which is very different to over there.
Okay.
With regards to women, I think there is a danger if you're a wife that's sort of accompanying your husband who's got the job and you've gone on his sponsorship, and maybe you haven't sorted out, or you've got young children, so you don't want sort of part-time work, or you don't want to get a job or whatever.
Yeah.
Then it can get really kind of isolating and kind of boring if you're by yourself, unless you've got a car. If you do have a car, then you can get out and about. But even so, there's like a limited number of activities to do. I think in the UK, I was used to having like a really kind of productive life. I felt like I was making a difference, being part of the community, all of that kind of thing. Over there, it really takes you time to find your community or find what it is, what good works are there out there that you can do. Of course, there are good things that you can do, but there's a danger of slipping into this kind of socializing with women and becoming one of these ladies who lunch.
Yeah.
And I think that depends very much on how you choose your friends, but you do have a whole section of society who are, you know, beautifully turned out and incredibly elegant and constantly going to hotels. They have like voucher booklets or voucher books over there.
And
buy
one get one free.
Right, and you can get into this false sense of, oh well, it's actually quite economical for me to do this, and go to like the big hotels and go for like a brunch with all the ladies, and you feel like, okay, well at least I'm meeting women and getting out there, but you're wasting an awful lot of money and it gets very boring and very samey very quickly. So it's really important to find your friends who will, you know, be a good support for you, and for that you kind of have to be a little bit vulnerable, sort of take off your kind of perfect gleam or whatever, and just kind of like allow yourself to meet people with backgrounds which are very different to yours, but still find commonalities.
And how do you meet with them? How do you find them?
So for me, my two main routes were either through the kids' school or through your mates and their wives. And alhamdulillah, although initially you kind of feel like, okay, so I don't have any shared history with this person, we don't find the same things funny, all of that kind of thing, but you gradually kind of get over that and start to find a meeting of minds. Okay.
Just to add to the women's, I mean, you find large groups of women by the Corniche, wouldn't you? No?
What do you mean?
Like, we were talking about maids earlier.
Yeah.
And we discussed like how Indian men or the labourers generally didn't have much to do.
Yeah.
But you'd find them all at the Corniche. Everyone of that kind of like class of society they would enjoy being the Corniche.
Yeah. So the Corniche would transcend all kind of class and gender kind of restrictions. And it's kind of the place that people just go to because it's very nice. So the Corniche there in Doha is around 3 miles long. You know, if you walk from, well, it's longer than that, but the bits which are worth walking on it's about 45 minutes or so of a walk. And we did have a question before around what's the Corniche there compared to the one in Dubai and Abu Dhabi. I mean, I think the Corniche, from my memory, the Corniche in Dubai isn't all that. It's not as well structured, and it's not as pleasant just to walk along. I think the Corniche in Abu Dhabi is fantastic. I think it outranks Doha.
Oh, really?
Yeah. The Corniche in Abu Dhabi is on the length of it's about 8 miles. So it's really, really beautiful, and it was a long time before it was in Doha. So the Doha Corniche is lovely. And it's got, there's fishing to do, and there's people selling those little toys which glow, and there's people hawking their goods, and kids on bikes, people jogging and stuff. And it's nice and wide. So there's plenty of, and like you said, it's very cosmopolitan. There's loads of different types of people.
It sounds like all those activities being done makes it sound like it would be quite a loud place to be, but it's not.
It's quite peaceful.
Practically silent. Everyone's just kind of there for the same reasons, to just get some peace and quiet, look at the sea. Yeah. Look at the sea and
go in relax. The sea. Go not swimming, but go on the boats.
Yeah.
You can
go on the dhow boats.
Go on the dhow boats and hire those out for an hour or so.
They're quite cheap.
It depends on if you get enough people together. Yeah. So if you just
that's another activity that we do. So we'd go and we kind of like chip in. It would be like everyone chip in 20 riyal each, which is like what, 4 quid, 3 quid.
Yeah.
And then we'd get a boat, go out and like play some music or whatever, or just enjoy the view. And one of the times we kind of went out during the day and then just jumped off the boat and started swimming in the sea.
Yeah,
it was fun, and we were allowed to do that. So.
Plus, as we mentioned in the Corniche, there's a park at each end, and there's a park in the middle of it as well. And there are cafes along it. There are food places and stuff. It's a very hustly, bustly place. Like you said, it's peaceful and kind of tranquil at the same time, with the smell of the sea and the kind of the salt water smell which you get into your nostrils.
Best thing about Doha, personally.
Okay. So we've just got 2 minutes left, so we're going to wrap up now. It's gone by pretty quickly, hasn't it?
Yeah.
Overall, it sounds like we enjoyed ourselves, and Qatar and Doha is a nice place to live.
It is.
I think we still are debating over if we were to move again, whether it would be back to Doha or one of the other countries which we've talked about, Morocco or Turkey. But if it was a Gulf country, I think it would definitely be Doha.
Well, we can discuss this tomorrow when we're talking about would we move back and why. And
not tomorrow, Friday.
Not tomorrow, Friday, next show.
Yeah.
Friday.
So we've got about a minute and a half left. So I'm going to just, one of the reasons why we didn't answer the question about what are the masajid like in Qatar. We didn't talk about any of the kind of activities which have an Islamic flavor, like the masajid, like what is it like to experience Ramadan in Doha, what is Eid like there. Yeah. We will talk about all of this and more, how Doha affected our iman, whether in a good way or a bad way, how it affected our Islamic practices, what it's like to raise a family. So please do join us for that show. That will be on this Friday, inshallah, at 3 o'clock, where we'll continue talking about Doha and Qatar, and we'll tell you more about the Islamic side of life there. I hope you enjoy our show, and I hope you will join us on the next one on Friday on Ramadan Radio with us Burhan, Rifka, and Yusuf. From us now, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.